If you are a staff pastor, do you agree with everything your lead pastor does and decides? Well, I hope not. And I hope not for a couple of reasons. Number one, because you lose yourself as a pastor and as an individual if you are a yes man to your pastor. And second of all, if you're a yes man to your pastor, then he loses your insight, he loses your perspective, he loses the value you bring to the table as an individual and as a pastor on that staff. And so I hope you're not a yes man, and I hope you don't agree with everything that your pastor decides. But the challenge is how do you manage all of your opinions? Because if you're like me, you have lots of opinions. You have lots of things that you think, and you have an opinion about everything. Well, maybe you're not as bad as I am. But how do you balance your opinions, your thoughts, your decisions, even this idea that if I was in his position, this is what I would do? How do you balance that with being supportive and with being on board and with supporting your pastor in his decisions and what he's doing? How do you balance those two things? Well, what we're going to do in this episode is I'm going to show you exactly how you can do both, have your opinion, share your opinion, but at the same time build trust, build loyalty, and support your pastor in whatever decision he makes, regardless if you decide to agree with it or not. So let's get started. So the big question is this: how do pastors like us who remain focused on the mission of Jesus and serving our communities without being distracted by everything in the world around us, how do we increase our effectiveness while living a lifestyle that doesn't compromise our health, our families, or our personal relationships with Jesus? That's the question this podcast is going to answer. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. Welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. I hope you're doing well. I hope this episode is finding you doing wonderfully wherever you are and whatever it is you are doing around the country. 3 days, my friend. I have 3 days until school is out. My middle child, he is done actually in 2 days. My oldest son, he is done in 3 days, and it is summertime. And so I don't know about you. I don't know what summer does for you and your family and your home, but for me, my life is about to get chaotic because I have 3 boys and they are all going to be home every day from this point on, starting in 3 days. So I'm excited. We have lots of fun things we are going to do. It's Virginia Beach. It's our new home. We're going to check some things out. We're going to do some beach days. We're going to go to the aquarium. We're going to go to the gym. We're going to do lots of fun things. But quite honestly, it's going to be very busy to keep these 3 boys active and occupied and not killing each other every day of the summer. So however your summer looks, I hope your summer is looking good and you're ready for it and you're prepared to relax. I'm going to try to relax as much as I can with these 3 boys, maybe watch a little baseball, but just enjoy the time that I have with them over the summer and still serve you and do this podcast and all the things that we do here at Ministry Hackers. And so however your summer is, I hope you're ready for it. I know I am kind of ready for it because in 3 days it's going to be here. So I'm super excited though, because I've been working several months on a new project that's just for you. And I'm super excited to tell you about it, but I'm not going to tell you a whole lot because we're not going to launch until about 3 or 4 weeks from now. But I just want to tease it and let you know something's coming. Something's coming for you as a pastor that's going to take this whole dream life and ministry idea and it's going to package it in such a way that's going to be easy for you to consume. It's going to allow you to connect with pastors all over the country. It's going to give you the opportunity to not only gain all kinds of insight and knowledge and understanding, but give you some practical understanding and practical steps on how to take you from where you are, whatever your ministry looks like, whatever your life looks like, whatever your family and home situation is, take you from there to the dream life that I believe God has called you to, the dream life that God is set up for you, and all you have to do is discover it. So I'm super excited about it. It's going to be a few weeks. I'm going to tell you a little bit more as we go over these next few weeks and let you know what's coming. And once it's opening up, I'll let you know that so you can dive right in. So I'm super excited about it. So keep your eyes out for more videos, more podcasts. If you're not on the email list, please join. And the best way to join today is to go ahead and download my free Getaway guide. And so if you are a pastor and you just need a getaway, you want a place to get away, there are places around the country that give free getaways for pastors just like you. And I want to encourage you to go to brandonpartycooper.com/free getaway. And right there on that list, you're going to download the list, and it's going to give you 10 places around the country that give free getaways to pastors just like you. Sometimes it's for pastors and families, sometimes it's pastors and spouse, and sometimes it's just for the pastor. But get the list, check out the 10 places, because you never know. One of those places might be right in your backyard and you don't even know it. And so get the list, go to brandonpartycooper.com/free getaway. See the list, 10 places around the country, free getaways for you to just enjoy, because these people who do these, they value you as a pastor, they value what you do, and they think that they want to bless you and serve you just like you've served and blessed so many people in your life. And so, again, go to brandonpartycooper.com/free getaway, get the list of 10 free getaways, and you'll be on the email list to be the first to know about the new opportunity that's coming up in the next few weeks. Okay, so what we're talking about today is we are talking about how to balance all of our opinions, all of our ideas, all of our thoughts. How do we balance that with supporting our pastor? Now, let me tell you a little bit of story from my own history. So when I was coming up into ministry, I had the opportunity to be to help lead a young adult group. We had a middle school pastor and a senior pastor, a middle school pastor and a senior students pastor. So youth pastor, middle school pastor. Sorry, I made that really complicated. And the middle school pastor decided that he was going to transition into starting a young adults program. We were in a college town. There were lots of colleges in the area. We had no young adult program really whatsoever. And so he was going to start this program. And so he transitions over. So I decided to go with him, transition him as well, follow him over. And so we started this young adult program together. And over time, what became very apparent, because I was single, I had no family, no kids, no marriage. I was just a young adult guy hanging out, playing basketball, and building ministry. And so because of that, I was very available. Everybody in the young adult ministry, they call me up or they text me or whatever. I was available. I could go have coffee at the drop of a hat. I was just very available to everybody. Now, Pastor Dave, who was the young adult pastor, him and I were very collaborative. He valued my opinion. I appreciated that because I had spent a few years with him already. And so he valued what I brought to the table. And so there were times, as I'm sure you've had in your own ministry, where Pastor Dave would have an idea and we would talk it through and we'd have our own perspective on it. And he would decide to go in a different direction than what I thought he should. Now, he had years of ministry under his belt, and I had, just a couple. And so he obviously had earned the position as the young adult pastor. He should have been the young adult pastor. He was much more gifted at the time and much more talented, had way more experience. And me, I was just kind of shooting from the hip. But, if you're in your 30s, 40s, and beyond, you remember what you were like in your 20s. You knew everything. I did. I knew everything in my early 20s. I was the best pastor the world had ever had in my 20s, because I just knew it all. And so there were times where him and I just didn't hit on the same note. We just didn't agree. But at the end of the day, he was the young adult pastor. I wasn't. I was just his assistant. I was just helping out. I was on his team, helping him out build this ministry. I wasn't the young adult pastor. And so there were lots of times where we would not see eye to eye, but when we walked out of the room, whether it was his office or a boardroom or wherever the decision was made, I understood one thing. My job was to support whatever decision that he had made prior to that. That was my job. That was my responsibility. That was my role. My role was not to use my relational capital with the rest of the young adults in the group to somehow sway his opinion, or to get them on board to say, yeah, Brandon, he really should have gone with your idea, or yeah, you were right and he was wrong. That was not what I was supposed to do. That was not my job. And quite honestly, that was not God honoring to him, to our ministry, and to the young adults that we served. My job was to follow his direction, follow his decision, no matter how I felt prior to the decision. There's a great quote that I love from Colin Powell. And what Colin Powell says is that when it's time to make a decision, or when we are preparing to make a decision, He wants to hear all the opinions and all the thoughts and all the understanding. He wants to know everything ahead of time. But what he says is the moment we walk out of that room, my opinion becomes your opinion. And that's what the public sees. And I learned that really early on, and that's something that I have taken with me through my entire ministry. Now, before we, jump to any conclusions, I haven't always done it right. I've made some serious mistakes along the way. I have an opinion about everything. Even if I don't know anything about it, I have an opinion about it. And I am not hesitant to share that opinion. And anybody that's ever worked with me, anybody that's been on my teams that I've led or that I've been on a team with, like they know, like if I have a perspective and I have an opinion, I'm going to share that opinion. But something that I've tried really hard to do, again, I've failed at it at times, but something I've really tried to do along the way is to make sure that when my lead, whether it's my lead pastor, the lead young adult pastor, whoever I'm serving above me, when that person makes a decision, I get on board and I follow through on that decision. I honor that decision and I support it. I champion it. I make it my own. So there were times when Pastor Dave, when we were in young adults, there were times when Pastor Dave, he had an idea and we would battle it out in his office, and I would give my points and he would give his points, and we would all go back and forth, and there would come a point where the back and forth was done. Like we could do this all day long and debate our points, but somebody had to make the decision. At some point, a decision had to be made. We had to move forward. And that person was Pastor Dave. It wasn't me. And so Pastor Dave would make the decision. He would say, okay, given all the information, everything we've talked about, this is the direction I think we need to go, and this is the decision we're making. When we walk out of that room, his decision was now my decision. So when people asked or they would push and prod, I would support whatever he said. I would be open and I would say, yeah, him and I just didn't see eye to eye on this, or, I had some, points that I brought up, but Pastor Dave made this decision, and I think it's the right decision because he's the one that God has placed in this role. He's the one that God has put in over us as young adults, and I'm going to trust his wisdom, his insight, his guidance. I'm going to trust his ability to listen to the Holy Spirit, and our job, my job first, and the rest of the young adults second. Our job is to follow Pastor Dave, whatever direction he's wanting to go, and whatever direction he decides. Now, did Pastor Dave get it right every time? No, absolutely not. There were times that Dave did get it wrong, and sometimes when he got it wrong, it was I was right and he was wrong. But I never pointed that out. I never pushed it, and I never certainly went to the young adults and said, man, Dave really missed that one. And I told him he should have done this, but he didn't do that. That was not my job. And we're going to talk about why. Why was that not my job? It wasn't my job because at the end of the day, Scripture says a house divided cannot stand. If you're a pastor and you're on staff, and maybe you do know everything, or maybe at least you know more than your lead pastor or whoever it is that you're following. The point is that you're not necessarily supposed to prove how smart you are or prove how right you are or prove any of that. Your job is to unify the body and move forward in whatever direction God has called you to. And so when you take your opinions and you make them more important than they are, and you don't support your pastor in the decisions he makes, all you're really doing is propping yourself up and creating disunity among the body. And as Scripture says, no house divided can stand, or a house divided cannot stand. And so you're fighting against God anytime that you stand up and say, Pastor really missed that one and he should have listened to me. Or I said this and Pastor didn't listen to me and look how things turned out. That's never going to bode well for you. Certainly not going to bode well for your lead. And it's not going to bode well for your church or congregation or ministry or whatever it is that you're leading, because you're fighting against the Scriptures themselves and this idea of unity that God promotes entirely throughout the Scriptures. And the second reason why you need to be on board, even when you don't agree, is you give the gift of security to your lead pastor. You give them that gift of knowing that they don't have to worry about you undermining what they're deciding. They don't have to worry about Dave didn't have to worry about what Brandon was going to do or what he was saying or was he going to undermine his authority. Dave didn't have to worry about that because I was on board with him. My job was to support him. Even if he was wrong, I was to support him. I was told, many times, early on in Bible college and growing up through ministry, if you can't support the lead pastor, then you need to move on. You need to step up and say, okay, I'm not on board with this. I don't think I can support these decisions that are being made. And rather than going around and spreading all this disunity, you need to remove yourself from the equation. And I know that's hard, especially if you have family and you're relocated in a place that you're not from. I get that. But quite honestly, if you're creating disunity and you're creating strife and dissension within the church, then you're not giving your pastor this gift of security. You're actually creating this insecurity within him and his perspective on you. And that's a dangerous place to be, really, because if you boil it down, really just because you want to be heard, really just because you want to have the right answer and you want to be able to say, I got this right. That's all you're really fighting for. Because if he makes the decision and it's wrong, then he learns from it. If he makes the decision he's right, then you learn from it. But anytime you step in and say, he was wrong and it should have been me and he should have gone with anytime you do anything like that, you're just tearing away what God is trying to create. And you're ripping disunity and you're taking this gift of security away from your pastor. And he has to second guess you and second guess his decisions. And we already struggle in ministry with pastors not being confident in who they are. But having a pastor who hires a staff member and that staff member is now undermining his authority, that's taking away security and taking away confidence and taking away the sense of safety for your lead pastor. So we don't want to do that. Your loyalty to your pastor, whether you agree with him or not, your loyalty, it will breed confidence in your leader. It will breed confidence in your pastor. Your pastor will believe in himself, believe in his decisions, believe in what he's doing. And quite honestly, he will trust your opinion much more because he sees the battle. He sees the conversation. He sees the discussion. He knows that you weren't on board. He knows that you didn't agree. But when you walked out of the room and he sees you supporting it, that just builds trust and builds this sense of, man, that guy is with me. That girl is with me. They are my team members and I can trust them. And that's absolutely what you want. You want this strong trust between you and your lead pastor, knowing that when they make a decision, they can trust that you're on board with it. They can trust that you're going to carry it out and you're going to follow through and you're going to hold up your end of the relational bargain by supporting them in their decisions, whether good or bad. None of us know exactly how it's all going to play out. And what you need to do and what I need to do is support the pastor that we follow. So those are the reasons why. But how? How is the real question. How do we be on board even when we're not sold on the idea? Pastor comes, he says, hey, excuse me, this is the direction we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. How are you going to be on board even when you are not sold on the idea? Well, the first one is that when given your opportunity, when the opportunity arises, when pastor comes and says, hey, what do you think? Voice your opinion in the decision-making process before the decision is made. A lot of staff pastors, pastor will come to him and say, hey, what do you think about this? And again, we slip into this yes man mentality. Oh, pastor, that's a great idea. I think it's great. And then when the decision is made, then the staff pastor comes back around, man, I knew from the beginning that was a bad idea. Well, you're not doing anybody a favor if that's the way you're approaching it. You're just being a yes man on the front end and you're creating division on the back end. If pastor is opening the door and asking your opinion, now part of it is you got to earn you have to have the credibility with your pastor for him to actually ask for your opinion. But when that door is open for your opinion to be heard, share it. Even if it's not what pastor wants to hear, even if it's not stroking his ego or, patting him on the back, if he's asking, hey, what do you think about this? Give your opinion. Be tactful about it. Don't be mean and, cut him down. I've had pastors that I've worked with that, they want to dabble in their graphics, and I'm not a graphic designer, so I take all that with a grain of salt. But I've had some pastors who come and, they want to do all these graphics that are way outdated, way off. Like, and, hey, what do you think about this? And so I have to put myself in the mindset and be tactful and say, this is a great start, but if you did this and tweaked this and maybe shifted this or changed the font, whatever, be tactful. Don't be like, oh man, that's terrible. What are you doing here? Here, let me just do it for you. Don't do that. That's not what your pastor needs. When the door is open and he says, what do you think? Tactfully share your opinion. Share your thoughts. That's the time to do it. Because once the decision is made and you all move forward, the discussion is over. Until you come back around to reevaluate. So when that door is open, share your opinion. Give your opinion in the decision-making process before the decision is made. The second thing, question a leader's decision, question your pastor's decision only behind closed doors. Sometimes your pastor just goes rogue, and we've all seen it. We've all been on staff, we've all followed somebody who there's this decision-making process in place, and this is how we normally do it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, pastor's just going and making decisions and doing his own thing. And sometimes it's really hard to be like, I'm supposed to support this, but I don't even get why we're doing this. I get that. But don't ever question your pastor in front of anybody else. Another staff member, congregants, community people. Never question your pastor in front of other people. You can be 100% right, but questioning him in front of other people makes you 100% wrong. Always question behind closed doors in a respectful way and in a way where he is going to receive that. And here's the thing. This isn't about him. This isn't about stroking his ego. It's not even about protecting him, even though that's what you're doing. It's really about your heart. It's about where you are. It's about, how you're handling things. Because if you build this habit of questioning leadership in front of other people early on in ministry, that will carry all the way through ministry, and it will sabotage you in your ministry because you're not handling things in a healthy way. So if you ever have to question a pastor, you ever run into a situation where you have to question the decision that's being made, always do it behind closed doors. Never do it outside in front of anybody else. Just you, just him. And do it in a respectful way. Share your concerns. Share your frustrations. Share those things in a respectful way. Hopefully your pastor will receive that and you can have a dialogue and a conversation about it. But even if they don't handle it well, I've worked with some pastors who they just don't take criticism well at all in any way. It doesn't matter how much you massage their ego. It doesn't matter how much you tiptoe around their emotions. It doesn't matter. They're going to get offended. Your job is not to worry about offending them. Your job is to be tactful and respectful and share your concerns. And whatever they do with that from that point on is on them, not on you. But if you come at them blasting them and criticizing them and they get all upset and frustrated, don't get frustrated at them. You came at them. They're going to come at you. That's just how it works. Share your frustrations or your question their decisions. Do it behind closed doors, not in front of anybody else. And then the third way you can be on board, even if you don't understand or even if you don't agree, is seek to understand, not to criticize. One thing I say all the time is any idiot can be a critic. Anybody can criticize something. We see it all the time. We see it on social media. We see it on the news. We see it all over TV and shows, and everywhere you go, somebody is criticizing something. It's easy to be critical. And when you're following your lead pastor, when you're on board on his staff, and you're carrying out decisions he's making, even if you don't agree with it, seek to understand why the decision was made. What is the thought process? What's the goal? Why are we doing this? If you don't understand why the decision is being made or understand why it's being carried out the way it is, ask questions. Seek to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. Don't criticize. Don't criticize to them. Don't criticize to other people, the congregants or other staff members. And I know it's easy. Again, I haven't always done this right, but I know it's easy to walk out of a staff meeting and go straight to the worship pastor's office or the other executive pastor's office or a youth pastor, whatever, go to their office and be like, what's pastor thinking? What is he doing? Like, don't do that. I know it's easy to do. Don't do that. Don't introduce that into the culture of your staff, because it will become a cancer that rips your staff apart over time. So don't criticize, seek to understand. And even if you don't understand, even if you ask all the questions and everything is explained, you're still like, I don't get it. Just resign that you're not going to get it and follow the decision. Because this is what I've learned time and time again. And it's taken me way too many times for me to learn this. I wish I would have learned it early. But what I've learned is that time will prove it out. If it's a bad decision, I don't have to tell Pastor it's a bad decision. I just have to let time play it out, and he will come to that realization on his own. Or there have been lots of times where I think it's a bad decision and we play it out. I don't say anything. I just let it play out, and I'm wrong in the end because it plays out exactly how Pastor wanted it to, exactly how he thought it would. And if I had been critical, if I had jumped on board with questioning his decision and bad-mouthing him to other staff members or to congregants or whatever, I would have looked like a fool, and I probably would have sabotaged what he was trying to accomplish simply because I didn't trust his decision. Time will tell. And so again, before decision making, sure, share your opinions, share your thoughts, share ideas. If you have to, after the decision is made, if you have to question it behind closed doors. But ultimately, let time play it out. Seek to understand, not to criticize, because time will show you what is right, what is wrong, what works, and what doesn't. And in the end, what you're going to have is you're going to have a strong relationship with your pastor. You're going to have strong trust between you and him. And he's going to probably want your opinion more because he knows that you don't agree with everything you do, with everything he does. But he also knows that you're supporting him and you're standing by him and you're carrying that decision as if it were your own to everybody else outside of the room. And that's really the goal. That's really what you want. Because if you can really breed unity into your congregation because you stand by your pastor and you follow him and trust him and you support his decisions even when you're not on board, if you can do those things, man, God is going to do great things in you personally, in your team, in your pastor, and in your church. And that's what we want. That's the goal. That's really what we're after. So again, I know we all have opinions and I know we all have thoughts and we would do it this way or we would do it differently. We all have that. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out a way to be on board even if you don't like the decision being made. And these 3 steps will help you do that. All right. Remember, keep your eye out for the opportunity coming in a few weeks. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll see you in the next episode.